From Nutrien Ag Solutions, I'm Senior Meteorologist Andrew Pritchard with your Canadian Prairie weather story for Monday, February 27th, 2023. I apologize, I'm coming to you a little bit later today than I had hoped to. We've had quite the morning here where I live, Champaign, Illinois. We've had tornadoes touching down just on the outside of the city limits here this morning, right around 8:45 this morning. So morning tornadoes in February. Quite the spring we're having here in the Midwest, or quite the spring we're having this winter in the Midwest is what I really meant to say there. But let's talk about what we've got going on across the Canadian Prairie this week, which is not much. It's going to be another cold week. Another shot of colder air comes in toward midweek, lasting through the weekend, and then we do have some light chances for snow again across the western and southern portions of the prairie here, far western and southern Alberta. So we look at temperatures, again, the coldest air well north and east of the region, the polar jet going north of the region. Look at the radar, some very light snow. This was a little earlier this morning. We had some light snow falling between Saskatoon and Medicine Hat. That continues to move off to the south and to the east through the day today. Looking at the satellite picture, we're kind of caught in between here, in between and off to the north of a rather active pattern. This is the storm system that's bringing all the severe weather, the rain and thunderstorms, to where I live here in central Illinois. We've got another storm system right now making its way into the Pacific coast of the northwestern United States with this active storm track that continues to kind of cut in across the western United States. Storm systems eject across the central and southern plains and then lift through the Midwest and the Great Lakes. So when we talk about the Canadian Prairie, while the pattern is active across North America, we are north of that activity. So we continue to see very weak systems kind of riding over the top here and just bringing these very light chances for, flurries, those shots of cold air, things that we've talked about, in depth over the last 2 to 3 weeks. Unfortunately, the snow that we saw in southern and western Alberta last week, not a signal of a major pattern shift. We continue to see chances for light precipitation over the next several days. This is the forecast, the precipitation type forecast through midday Thursday from the NAM model. And again, you see those chances for very light snow. Much of the more active pattern, much of the heavier precipitation still tracking well south of the prairie. So here is the total snowfall forecast from Monday through midday Thursday, March 2nd. Again, we see a chance for some light snow stacking up here across western and southern portions of the prairie. We stack a little more on that here this weekend into early next week. Again, seeing that chance for maybe, upwards of 4 to 6 inches of snow across central, western, and southern Alberta into far southwestern Saskatchewan. Again, a lot of this over the weekend into early next week. And then where we expect to see the quietest conditions is going to be across a big chunk of Saskatchewan, central and southern Manitoba, looking at a pretty dry next 7 to 10 days. Now here's the jet stream on Monday morning. Again, the flow coming down around the base of this trough with storm systems really just racing from southwest to northeast across the midsection of the U.S. So this is where it continues to be very active. We continue to see that very heavy precipitation. North of that, across the prairie, we get these little subtle disturbances, very light doses of precipitation. We'll animate this, and I'll show you here as we get into the weekend early next week. You see this little, it almost looks like a wave breaking right here, this ridge across the Pacific, drawing your attention right here. As we just put this back into motion over the next couple of days, that wave kind of breaks, and then we get this trough, this little, you can kind of make it out here, these stronger winds coming into British Columbia. Those winds are coming in, they're fanning out. We get a little bit of lift across portions of the prairie, predominantly across, Alberta, southwestern Saskatchewan, if we're to believe this verbatim. We see that happen here end of the week, and then once more as we get into the weekend early next week. So if we look at the precipitation type forecast over the next 10 days, we should see that kind of line up. Again, pretty quiet this week. That light snow today, maybe some light snow continuing through Wednesday, primarily across Alberta and southwestern Saskatchewan, just off and on flurries. And then here's as we get into the end of the week, we start to see the impacts here from that trough just offshore, starting to see some bursts of snow potential here, predominantly again across Alberta, southwestern Saskatchewan. We see a ridge of high pressure trying to come in here from the north, and that's going to, again, force these storm systems south of the prairie, and that's why we don't get a real big hit from any substantial moisture. So the next 10 days look like this from the European model. Again, western, southern portions of Alberta, possibly picking up half an inch of liquid precipitation, a few tenths of an inch. You make your way further off to the east, though, and it is quite dry over the next 10 days. Here is your probability of picking up 3 inches or more of snow over the next 10 days. Again, a big dry corridor here that takes up a lot of real estate across the prairie. If you want to get some snow over the next 7 to 10 days, it's going to be, again, heading towards portions of western and southern Alberta into southwestern portions of Saskatchewan. Temperatures over the next 10 days, we are going to see another shot of cooler air make its way in as we get into the end of this week. Over the weekend, what does that look like? Some of our select cities here. Calgary, we warm up all the way to a high of 4 above on Thursday, but then that next shot of cooler air rotates in over the weekend into early next week. Those highs again around -6, -8, -10 in Edmonton. That's the high for the next couple of days. And then again, on the backside of that next shot of cold air, Saskatoon, a very similar look. The warmest days here this week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, just about everywhere across the prairie. Here's Regina, and then we'll finish with Winnipeg. A cold next 3 days, a little more mild as we head into the end of the week, into the weekend, but still a little colder than average, especially as we get into the early part of next week.